What is up, guys? Clayton here with another C++ programming tutorial. If you haven't watched the first two, please go and do those. I'll put a link down in the description to them. Last video we focused on inputs and outputs. We prompt the user to enter a set of numbers, and then we added those two numbers, and it would display the result. And you know, it's simple, but I think it kind of gets the point across that you could do it with two numbers, you could do it with 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers, and I encourage you to try that. Kind of follow what we did in the video, and then you can replicate it as many times as you want, and really make the program do what you want to do. And really, that's kind of the beauty of programming, is you can create a program to do a certain task that you otherwise wouldn't really want to spend the time doing. So today we're really going to dive into, I guess you'd call it, programming logic. And what that is it'll kind of make more sense at the end of the video. You'll get an idea of kind of how we design programs for a purpose, and I'm going to give you those tools and kind of that mindset of the steps that you're going to want to take to build such program. So what we're going to do today is we're going to design a sensor. And well, we're not going to design the sensor, like the actual electronic components of it. However, if you are interested in that, you can go to my first two tutorials where I actually go over how to design a sensor using electronics and circuits. But we're going to be writing the software, the program that's going to monitor and kind of it's going to be the brain of this sensor. And what it's going to do is we're going to have it be a water sensor, and when the water gets above, let's say, a certain temperature, we want to output to the user that the water is too hot, or kind of warn them. And there's a few ways we can do that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive into it. The first half of this video is going to be very, very simple, and then the second half is going to be a little bit more complicated, because we're going to be introducing a new programming skill called loops. So let's go ahead and get started by deleting our program. Everything between return and end main can go, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, what are we doing with this program? Well, we're going to be reading temperature, and temperature is numbers, so we're going to need an integer. So we can let's store the temperature of the water in an integer, and we'll just call it 10. And we can, yeah, that should be good. The next thing we're going to do is we want to set the temperature to, let's set it to 0 when we first start. This is kind of called initializing. You can do it, you don't have to, but sometimes it's good to set your integer to 0 before you store something in it. You don't have to, but I like to. So as we're kind of going through the steps of this program, I really want you to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I'm going to reiterate this, probably 30 times, what we're doing. So if you look right now, we have an integer and its temperature, and we are setting our initial temperature to 0. So let's pretend we have a sensor, and the sensor is now being dipped in the water, and then the sensor would then store the temperature and our temp. So let's pretend the sensor, the actual physical sensor, takes a reading of 50 degrees, and then we want to see out temp. So we can build it, and it should say 50. Go down here. It's taking a while for some reason. 50, okay, so we kind of have an idea here. Well, let's say it reads 100. We can go ahead and build it again. It should output 100, but let's say the temperature reads 150, really hot, okay? And we want to warn the user that if it's, let's say if it's above 100 degrees, which I know is probably fine, but if it's above 100 degrees, we want to prompt the user to, take caution. So how would we do that? Well, if we just see out, well, first let's output our text. What are we going to tell the user? So we're going to put our quotes. We're going to say water is hot. You can write whatever you want. But right now, I mean, this is just going to output all the time. It doesn't matter if this is, if the sensor reads 1 degrees or if it reads 1,000. It's always going to output water is hot. So what we want to do, we're going to use an if statement, if-then statement. And how an if-then statement is, so let's say if something is true, then do this. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So let's say if temperature is, let's say I want to output when the temperature is 100 degrees. Well, this if statement would say if temperature is equal to 100 degrees, then, output water is warm or whatever. And how that looks is, well, it's pretty simple. It's kind of like math class, right? You remember your greater than and equal than symbols, with the alligator, whatever weird thing your teacher tried to teach you. So we could do if, and then we do parentheses, temp. Let's do if temp is equal. Now notice I did 2 equals. This is saying if temp is equal to a number. If I did 1 equal, that's assigning temp a number. So make sure we do 2. So let's do if temp is equal to 100. And then what we're going to do is we can go after the parentheses. And we're going to do these brackets. And then you can hit enter and it'll make 2 brackets. So we can take this, copy it, paste, put that in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to run it, and right now temp is equal to 0. So let's say the sensor is out of water, or it's not reading anything. Well, it shouldn't display this. So let's go ahead and build. Let's run it. It should, so nothing should happen. See? Nothing happened. So now let's set this to 100, and if it's working correctly, then it should display this message. Just like that. So water is hot. Okay, so if you kind of think about it, there's kind of a big problem with this program. So let's say the water is 100, let's say the water is 200 degrees, right? It's really warm. And we set this to 200. Oh, I'm sorry, let's say the sensor reads 200, so let me put a little note. Sensor reading. So we can, like I said, just pretend this is an actual physical water sensor that's being dipped in a cup of water. And it takes a reading of 200, and we go ahead and run the program. Well, nothing's going to happen because temperature, even though the water is extremely hot, it's not equal to 100. So the logic behind this, it's kind of flawed. It's not going to account for everything above 100. So what we want to do is we want to change our operators to if temp is greater than or equal to 100. And then we can go ahead and build it. And then now it should, even though temp is set to 200, it should say the water is hot. And there we go. So we can have multiple if statements in our program, and you actually are going to have, when you get into more complicated programs, you're going to be using tons of if-then statements. So let's say we want to output and let the user know if the water is cold. Well, we just write another if statement. So if temp, how about, is less than or equal to 99, CL water is cold. And I know 99 degrees is not cold water, but you know, we're trying to do a program here, so please don't write in the comments that it's warm. I know. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it again, build and run. And remember, it should skip this. So if for whatever reason it's outputting both, you got to check your code. Good, water is hot. So it's going through the steps and it's skipping this part because temperature is in fact, it's not less than or equal to 99. So let's change this to 50. The sensor reads 50 degrees. And I'm sure you know what's going to happen. It should skip this and it should read water is cold. And there you go. So kind of given these statements, you can make quite a bit of programs. You could do, I can't even explain how many programs you can write with just, the knowledge that you guys have from this video. But definitely, think of something that you want to make, and the best way to learn programming is to practice it. So I think that's about it for today's video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments, or like I said, you can send me an email. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and please practice. So thanks guys, please like and subscribe, and until next time.